Hello and welcome to Honey Badger Radio's Health, Mental Health Edition. Today's topic is how to talk to your significant other with Warren Farrell. We're joined today by our very own counselor in training, Tanis, and of course, our special guest, Dr. Warren Farrell. Dr. Warren Farrell trains couples and psychoanalysts worldwide in the art and discipline of love. He's a pioneer in both the women's movement and the modern men's movement. He is the co-author with John Gray of The Boy Crisis, 2018, and the author of 2 international bestsellers, Why Men Are the Way They Are and Women Can't Hear What Men Don't Say. His books are published in more than 50 countries and in 17 languages. Do you mind if I call you Warren, Dr. Farrell?
Oh, please. You could even say, do you mind if I call you Warren?
Do you mind? Okay. Warren is here to talk to us about training couples to better communicate. His training includes techniques such as cinematic immersion and the Communication-Without-Defensiveness method. Before we get into the discussion, I'd like to read some of the testimonials about your workshop. Is that okay, Warren?
Sure, absolutely.
This one is from Tony Fournier, Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Air Force. The weekend my wife and I spent with at Dr. Farrell's home was priceless. I learned more about being a man in 2 days than I have my entire adult life. My big takeaways from this weekend are the cinematic immersion technique and listening with loving eyes. Wow, I'm still working on perfecting these every day. And what a joy it is to see actual long-lasting positive change in my marriage. Dr. Farrell is one of a kind. He's absolutely genuine, and during our weekend together made us feel like we were the only 2 people on Earth. It's still hard to believe he took 2 days of his schedule and devoted it to my wife's and my relationship. Dr. Farrell has not only saved my marriage, but in many more ways has saved my life. And this one is from David Jeffries. I'm a corporate coach at a large company. After I took the couples communication workshop led by Warren Farrell, I was coaching 2 very intelligent managers who are having a major disconnect on an important project. The result could have been very harmful to the project and the career of at least one of the managers. I taught them to use Dr. Farrell's cinematic immersion process. Their relationship was so turned around that the manager said that he was amazed how something so relatively simple that did not require a personality change could have had such a positive effect on their relationship and the progress of the project. He laughed. It was almost like I was cheating. And this one is from Therese Brady. I use your cinematic immersion process prior to each of our weekly meetings. My marriage and the love I feel for Ron is so much deeper and stronger. The thing that I keep reflecting on is that Ron is willing to die for me. Knowing that makes it so easy to be willing to listen and hear Ron's criticism. I also use your cinematic immersion for when I'm interacting with others. I'm an assistant principal, and many times I listen to angry parents and staff members. I now feel that I can listen less defensively. Yay! Last, I wanted to let you know that I requested to be reassigned to the classroom after 2 years as a school site administrator. After attending your workshop and feeling deeper love for Ron and appreciation for him and my family, I want to be home more and just be more present and available to them. Our kids are in junior high, and I don't want to miss more time with them than I already have. I feel so happy, relieved, and free. Thank you so much for your workshop. You helped me learn strategies to help me have a better relationship, which saved my marriage and changed me as a person for the better. I have recommended your workshop to others, and I sincerely hope they attend. I wish Ron and I had attended your workshop 15 years ago. All right, those are some very positive words about the work you do. So could you take us through a day at your workshop, Warren?
Yeah. First, maybe can I give a little bit of background as to what led me to this workshop, to doing it to begin with?
Sure.
Okay. As you know, I've been in both the women's movement and the men's movement, and after sort of like trying to articulate for many years women's perspective and sometimes having men hear it and sometimes not, and then and then feeling that had been better represented, or very well represented by the mainstream, and that men and boys were being left out, trying to articulate boys and men's perspective. Sometimes people heard it, sometimes people couldn't. I was realizing that no matter how much people understood the substance of what I was saying, what is different about men and about women, and how to be compassionate to both of them, when it came to having an argument in an actual relationship, if one person felt criticized, the other person felt almost automatically completely defensive and forgot pretty much everything of substance that they said that they had learned from me. And so I realized that there was a deeper problem going on. And so as I looked at that, I started thinking about how did we, why is it that the Achilles heel of all human beings is our inability to handle personal criticism without becoming defensive? And I started to understand that one of the first things I explained in the workshop is that falling in love is biologically natural. Sustaining love is biologically unnatural. Biologically unnatural to sustain love. And so, because historically speaking, if you were in a kinship network or a tribe and you were being criticized from another kinship network or tribe, your fear was that they might be an enemy. And so you had to get up your defenses in order to be able to resist the enemy effectively. If you didn't do that and you were right that they were an enemy, you could be wiped out. Alternatively, you had the option of killing the enemy before the enemy killed you. And so that all was very helpful to survival. But what it wasn't helpful to is listening to your partner who wants to express his feelings to you, and you treat them like the possible enemy, and you either sidestep and counterattack and try to kill them before they kill you, metaphorically. And so I said so in order to have love deepen, there had to be a way around, I hope that there was a way around this biologically natural propensity that when your partner shares whatever his feelings are, that you experience it as criticism if it's aimed at you changing a behavior or an attitude. And so, and you respond defensively. So that leaves your partner unheard, and they mark in their mind's eye, don't bring this issue up again. So, because it only gets worse rather than better. Therefore, they start crossing that issue off as safe for the communication, and then they cross another issue off, and after a while, 10 years, 5 years later, you feel like there's a good part of you sealed off from your partner. And so then you become vulnerable to drinking, gambling, going to bars, going out with other women or men, feeling not understood. And so you might have children and feel, okay, the children will get us back together again. And so but the children, they keep you together because you don't want to leave the children. But oftentimes people are legally married and psychologically divorced. They're in a sense in a minimum security prison marriage. So the opening of the workshop, a typical day at the workshop, I explain this background. And one of the purposes of explaining it is to have everybody understand that there's the only people in this workshop who are not prone to becoming defensive when they hear criticism are either people who aren't alive, or B, alternatively, people who aren't in love. Because if you're not in love, because people will sometimes say to me, well, Warren, doesn't a deep amount of love for my partner handle this? And the answer is no. And the reason is no is because the more deeply you love, the more vulnerable you feel. So the person you love so deeply beginning to say something that you feel may lead to the end of a relationship, if you perceive it as ending a relationship, you want to defend yourself so the relationship doesn't end. If you meet somebody in a plane and they make a critical argument of you, and you think, all right, I'm going to be off this plane in a few hours or minutes, and doesn't make a big difference. But the more you love, the more vulnerable you feel, therefore, the more likely you are to become defensive. So that led me to finding out was there a way around this biologically hard wiring, if you will, toward becoming defensive. And so I said, well, first of all, it can't be natural. So back to the point that I was making before, that falling in love is biologically natural, sustaining love is biologically unnatural. So the next step was to say, okay, if that's a biologically natural criticism, a biologically natural propensity to become defensiveness, I've got to invent something that's unnatural. And so I then started to create two things. One is a 166 hours a week. And I created I asked each group member to create as a conflict-free zone. And then I taught them how to sustain that conflict-free zone during the course of the week. And I'll get back into that later. The other 2 hours a week was a chance for you to appreciate your partner, followed by sharing one concern that you had that was the most important concern that came up during the week. And then the other was to appreciate your partner again. So during the concern portion, before I have people listen to their partner, I have them not be in their natural state, but in a biologically altered state. So I create 6 mindsets that each person in that room goes into to be able to alter their natural defensiveness and hear their partner better. So one of the people who gave the endorsements that you read mentioned about the importance of learning about dying for your partner. So I'll give an example based on that. I have each of them write on a piece of paper, the exact same piece of size paper that I explained to them their partner will never see. And I asked them this question: if your partner's life was threatened, maybe drowning and ready to a car accident, and you knew that if you didn't do anything, there was 100% chance that your partner would die. But you knew if you interfered with saving that, trying to save them, there'd be a 50% chance that you would die. Would you take that 50% chance to risk your life to save your partner? Assuming you don't have children. So I let children be out of the equation, just so we isolate the love for the partner. And I found that in the group, so then I have everybody take what their answer is. They fold the paper into a tight ball. The men throw it on one side of the room. The women throw the pieces of paper on the other side of the room. Then only the women pick up the women's pieces of paper, only the men's pieces of paper. And they read whether or not they'd be willing to die for their partner. So every man goes around the room and says, die, yes, die, no, or die uncertain was another option. And so usually in any given room of maybe 20 men, all the men except for one will say that every man in the, will have yes, for certain would die for my partner. And then I asked the women to do the same thing. Usually about 85 to 90% of the women say they would die for their partner. And so the sex difference is less important than the fact that almost everyone in that workshop realizes they're sitting next to a person who would be willing to die for them. So the first mindset is, if I would die so you would live, then I can listen so you will blossom. And so with that perspective in mind, you begin to say, my God, next to death, listening for 15 minutes is not such a heavy duty assignment. And so I then add 5 other mindsets like that. And then what I call the magic word, which is hold. That is, while you're listening to your partner's criticism, if at any moment you aren't feeling centered in that mindset of complete receptivity to your partner's story and your partner's way of looking at things, then I ask you to just say hold. And then your partner will stop the criticism at that second, and you will center yourself. And when you feel centered again, no matter how long that takes, or even if it needs to be next week, you center yourself, and then you say, okay, I'm ready to hear more. And so that one mindset alone isn't enough. But I found 5 other mindsets as well that, when added to that first mindset, leave a person feeling like, my God, well, for example, the second mindset I say is what I call the love guarantee. And so you're saying to yourself, if I provide a safe environment for my partner's feelings, she or he will feel more loved by me. If they feel more loved by me, they'll feel more love for me. So no matter how mad or angry they get, that safe environment for their upsetness, their anger, even if they are swearing, the worse behavior they are, the more they touched that they will be that I provided a safe environment for it. And the more they will feel loved by me, the more they will feel safe by me. And so by the time the partner finishes telling their story, they really feel like, yes, I've said a lot of what I've said before in this relationship, But the difference is I've never felt as well heard. And that's the key central thing that happens. I'm not hearing you.
I'm not hearing you either.
Thank you for that background, Warren. Apologize. Bit of technical difficulties. So to go back to my question, what does a day doing this workshop look like with you, taking a couple through this? Absolutely. Or a bunch of couples?
Yes, usually I do places like the workshops at places like Esalen are usually the growth centers around the country. And so it's usually about 30 to 40 people there, 15 to 20 couples. And so the first thing that I do is sort of explain the larger picture like I was explaining to you. Then I ask them to do a series of exercises and each exercise introduces one of these mindsets that becomes then meaningful to them. Then I teach them how to appreciate each other. And so, if you don't feel appreciated by your partner, you don't have much incentive to really listen to their story. So the appreciation sort of builds the reservoir of love. And so when people, but most people appreciate, and men typically, for example, will sort of say, Allison, she's the best mother. Allison, she's the most intelligent thinker. So they'll do broad brush appreciations. Men are especially good at doing broad brush appreciations in public. And the woman usually feels very honored by that. But after the 10th time or so that she hears it, she sort of isn't so meaningful to her anymore. So a lot of what I work with is how to give appreciations. And one of the magic ingredients in appreciations, or secret sauces, if you will, in the appreciation is knowing how to be specific. So I might say, "Oh, my wife is a great cook," but alternatively, I could say, "The Thanksgiving dinner that you prepared was really outstanding," or alternatively, I could say, "The way the turkey was cooked with the crisp skin. How did you do that? That was amazing. I've never had skin that crisp before." Or alternatively, you could say, "The stuffing was so moist and was so flavorful. Was that sage or oregano or thyme that you put in that, or was it something else?" And so the more specific you get, the more your partner is going, "Wow, it was really worth all the effort that I put into figuring out how to make sure that dressing remained moist and the nuance of flavors really was seen and appreciated." And so your partner feels so much more appreciated by that. Then I teach them how to locate the appreciations. So let's say that was the appreciation was about the fact that in the morning you brought your partner orange juice, and your partner likes about half orange juice and half water, and you remember to put half orange juice and half water in your partner's orange juice. And so the location of the appreciation is putting like maybe a Post-it in the refrigerator by the orange juice. So the next time your partner goes into the refrigerator, they see an appreciation by you for exactly what you did that made the orange juice so perfect, that you did that mixture of half orange juice and half water, and that made you feel so appreciated. So now the next time the partner walks into the house and they go to the refrigerator, they're having sort of a deja vu experience of having opened the refrigerator the last time and being appreciated. Or going to the turkey in the refrigerator and being appreciated. Or the next Thanksgiving dinner, they remember the last time they were appreciated for the turkey. And so you begin to build up a whole feng shui in the house of that the house has a different feeling. And so I talk with people, with my people in the room, about their experiences and how how to do the appreciations, and they practice doing appreciations, then they practice making them more specific, then they practice making them more specific than that, then they practice doing it creatively. So for example, one woman gave actually it was a fellow that gave an appreciation to his partner, and he did about 20 different versions of the appreciation, cut them out into small pieces of paper, put them on the top of the door. And so when his wife opened up the door, they fell like snowflakes all to the floor. And so it was, that type of, so the words of that appreciation were appreciated, but the experience of having that happen when you open the door and having all those snowflakes of appreciation fall to the floor is something that she'll probably never forget. And so it's those types of things that I train couples to do in the workshop.
Just getting back on that idea of non-defensive listening. So just from what I'm hearing you say, the idea, the basis for non-defensive listening is to get into this particular headspace before you listen to the criticisms that your partner has. Is that
Yes.
Is there any quick way that we could you might give a suggestion to people listening that might help improve, just not necessarily the whole workshop, but just
Yes.
just a quick improvement that they might try for themselves?
I don't have this piece of paper with me, but maybe maybe we can all visualize it. One of the things I do at the workshop is pass out a piece of paper that has 4 pictures of the same person on it, done by 4 different artists. And it's the same person who happens to be Mario Cuomo at the same time. And there was 4 different versions of Mario Cuomo on it. And so one of the things I do is to ask each person in the workshop to know that that the story of their partner, even though it's of the exact same Mario Cuomo, metaphorically speaking, the former governor of New York, by the way, and at the exact same time, every single person will give you a different picture of that exact same experience. And so when your partner is talking, the definition, or one of the definitions of loving your partner, is to listen and be fascinated with their picture, their version of the same picture that you will 100% likely have a different version of. So one of the toughest things to do in the workshop is once the woman or man feels, and by the way, this workshop can be done same sex. It also can be done mother to daughter, father to daughter, son, whatever. A couple is any 2 people who have a past that would like a future. And so as you're getting into this altered mindset state, you're saying to yourself, I am just going to allow myself to be fascinated with my partner's story, no matter how much anger it includes. When my partner sees that I can just provide a safe environment for her or him, they're going to feel so loved. And so that's the visualization you have to have. Conversely, once your partner hears you, then before you hear your partner's response, you need to move into that altered mind space, because you are now even more vulnerable. Your partner has just heard your story, so you're shocked that your partner is going to come back, having just heard your story so well, with a totally different version of the same story. You'll say to yourself, wait a minute, I just felt so hurt a few minutes ago. Now my partner's giving a different version of it. Why isn't their version the same as mine when they've told me that they heard my version so well? And the reason is because with 100% certainty, your partner will have a different version of that. And if you love your partner, your first step is to sit back, provide a safe environment by going into an altered mindset and not feeling like because you've just been heard, you'll be just perfectly fine about hearing their version of the story. And so so if you are able to sort of say to yourself, when my partner is upset with me, the more I love them, the more vulnerable I will feel. But the way to love my partner most effectively is to be able to provide a safe environment for whatever they have to say, without even criticizing the way they're saying it. And the worse they say it, the more secure and loved they'll feel about being able to speak their truth. And my hearing their truth fully does not mean I agree with their truth. It only means I'm providing a safe environment for them to tell their truth.
And just a quick question about all this. This has to be reciprocal, correct? Because I'm listening to this and I'm imagining theoretical abusive partner exploiting this kind of I can say whatever I want, you just are expected to love me. But if it's reciprocal respect, then that's a different kind of situation. So it has to be reciprocal.
The answer to that is yes and no. So the yes part is if you're in a choice relationship, that is, you have chosen your partner has chosen you, then you want it to be reciprocal. If you're in a, like with my father passed away when he was 99. He was a really fine man in almost every way, but he was, born in 1910. And then, when you're born in that generation, particularly when you're a male, you tended to sort of have, and you felt the way you were a good father was to criticize, and the way that you were a good father was to help your son do better, and or your daughter do better. And so I knew my father would never be able to fully listen to me. From his perspective, psychology was, you didn't get into psychology because psychology made you question the things you had to do. And from his perspective, life was not doing what you wanted to do. Life was doing about what you had to do. And becoming a man was giving up your wants and your desires and fulfilling your obligations and responsibilities. And so and his job was to teach me not to do things like psychology, where you undermine, from his perspective, quote, undermine, you undermine people's need to have to do what they absolutely had to do, like earn a living, maybe at a job that he didn't like, but this was to support his family, to make his family's lives better than his life. And so I knew that I would probably never in my lifetime or his be able to get my father to fully listen to me. So my job was to do that in a one-sided way, which was to listen to my father, and instead of arguing with him, let him know that I heard what he said. Well, it took him maybe 3 or 4 years to begin to trust that he could get into a conversation with me, and no matter what he said, he could feel heard by me. And as he felt heard, his need for upsetness got less and less, because people don't usually abuse somebody they are feeling heard by. They abuse somebody by whom they are not feeling heard. And so eventually, toward the end of his life, he began to ask me questions, and he began to listen to me, not in the way that I would train somebody to do at a workshop, but in a way that was a lot better than he had ever done in my earlier years. And so that's what I mean. There are some people, I wouldn't choose to have that relationship with any human being, but he's my father. I love him. He did a huge amount of good in my life, and he did the best he did in the way he knew how. And so that becomes a way of doing that in a one-sided way. You also can do that in a one-sided way with a boss or an employee. They're not going to have gone to the workshop. They're not going to know these skills, but you can provide a safe environment for them. And it's very rare that when a person is feeling heard, that they become abusive. It is almost always the case that if a person is feeling interrupted and distorted, and then they try to clarify their position, and then you interrupt them and distort them again, that is when they become either verbally abusive or physically abusive.
Okay. Well, that's an approach to and how would you, so if you were in, and I'm taking this in a different direction, but if you were in an abusive relationship, a one-sided relationship, you would recommend that people use these techniques to try to improve that relationship?
Yes.
Or?
As a step 2, the first step is you make it crystal clear that physical abuse is not okay. That I will listen to you, but I will not listen to you after you hit me, after you push me, after you shove me. That is out of the question. So what you were mentioning, cinematic immersion. Cinematic immersion means it's on like sort of you're mentally seeing your partner on a movie screen, in a sense. And so the movie screen is not so 3D that it punches you. And so you don't. So the first thing is a boundary that is really clear that physical abuse is not okay, and also drawing a consequence for it, a consequence that you can live up to, so that if the physical abuse is something that is a punch or whatever, what you decide what you can handle, what you can't handle. Ideally, you can handle little or none of it, and you make clear what's going to happen if you do receive that physical abuse. But then you also add to that, and I know that physical abuse, the desire to become abusive, usually verbally to our partner, increases when you don't feel heard. And so I'm going to work on hearing you as well as I can. So you will feel like instead of feeling a desire to fight back at me, you will feel more loved by me. And people don't hit people usually that they're feeling more loved by.
Okay, could you just explain a bit more about cinematic immersion and what that is?
Yes. Let's see. It's the first part of it is knowing that your job is to become completely immersed in your partner's story. And so when you're at a cinema, the first thing you do is one of the things you do, at least I do, is if somebody is about to be attacked, let's say a woman is walking down a dark alley at night, and the music is playing in such a way that you're fearful that somebody's going to jump out and hurt her or kill her. I might feel really tense for her protection. And then I say to myself, wait a minute, I'm here, I'm only in a movie. And in a movie, I'm here to entertain myself, not to get all wrapped up in the possibility of somebody on a screen being hurt. So the first thing I do is to relax my body like I would in a movie when I'm feeling more tense than I want to feel. Also in a movie, I say to myself, I'm here to be fascinated with people's stories. I don't stand up in the movie theater and say, wait a minute, I don't agree with that version of something. You sit back, you relax, and you allow each person to tell their story. In a movie theater, you let the person, you don't leave in the middle and say, I disagree with that story, I'm going to be out of here. You might leave if it's boring, but you usually don't leave for a fascinating disagreement. And so you move yourself into the mindset of that. In a cinematic immersion experience, one of the other mindsets that I ask people to do is to imagine when their partner is saying something that is clearly negative, where you would about you, and you're saying to yourself, normally speaking in your mind's eye, you're saying, I don't even get why Allison would want to live with me or be married to me if that's the way she feels about me. And so I ask people in the workshop to alter their mindset about that and imagine that those negative assessments of you are like pollution in a stream. And so imagine this negative ball of stuff in the stream, and then when you listen to when your partner listens to you, that their listening process is like a filter. Like the screen that you have up in front of you in the microphone form right now. And the filter catches that pollution and allows your partner to feel so heard that she or he becomes like pure again, like a pure stream. And so instead of imagining a polluted stream and taking what your partner is saying, like what she or he is saying now is forever, that's their opinion of me. You say a different thing to yourself, which is, once I listen to my partner, that stream that is polluted becomes a pure stream that is not feeling that way toward me anymore, because that is the power of being listened to and being heard. So if you have somebody who's doing hate speech, rather than argue with that person, allow them to share their truth. Ask them how they got to where they got to. What was their family background? Care about their story. They're a human being too. When they feel cared about and feel loved, and feel like they don't have to be angry in order to express what they feel, very frequently the amount of hate dissipates. It's one of the best, if you want to defeat a hater, listen to them empathetically for a while. And unless they're really in a very psychologically disturbed space, you at least will see a lowering of the hatred.
All right. Thank you for that. Warren, did you have anything that you wanted to ask, Prim?
Well, I mean, basically, I really appreciate what it is that you're doing. I think that it sounds like it's a really interesting and effective way of approaching it. One thing that I was thinking about is that whenever I see people arguing and having this kind of breakdown in communication, I often see it happening in one of two ways. And the first way is something bad happens and there's a big blowout between them, and one or both of them is like, well, I mean, I'm angry at my partner, and just even seeing them just pisses me off now. I don't want to be near them. That must mean that I don't love them anymore. Although usually I don't see those styles of communications make it to marriage, but sometimes they do. But the other style that I see is kind of when one person buries their problems within themselves, and they kind of wind up building that resentment over time, and nothing is changed in the interim, and eventually the one partner just winds up building resentment while nothing is being done, and they eventually get so far along that nothing will change their mind. They get so far into this mode of, I believe the word that I see most often used that is destructive to relationships is contempt. So if they reach that stage, then basically it's going to be very difficult to challenge it. Admittedly, I used to have a bit of problems with bottling things up when I was younger, and it actually took a lot of hard work to overcome that. But I think that I was initially doing it out of a drive to not want to hurt my partner. So it's just, even though in the end it just wound up getting to the point where I was the one feeling hurt. And the worst part of it was when I actually finally got up the courage to try and talk about the problems and explain what was going on. He didn't take any of my concerns seriously, because up until that point I hadn't said anything.
Yes. Yes.
So I was just going to ask if you've had any other interactions with different kinds of argument styles, and what, if any, do you feel is the hardest to overcome?
Yes. Yeah. Good question. I see usually one of two styles, and then the spectrum between the two. The first style is where someone is keeping something in as long as possible and not bringing up the issue, like you were saying. And by the way, that style very frequently results in cancer. Is that repressed sort of I can't share what is going on. I'll offend my partner, or she or he won't understand me, or I'll hurt the relationship and I need the relationship too much, or I'll lose. The person will just back off from me. I'll lose more than I gain is oftentimes the internal dialogue there. The alternative is all the way on the other end of the spectrum is, I'm feeling this feeling. Let's say we're on our way to the theater, and we're going to meet some friends there, and we're going to have dinner before and theater afterwards, and a whole evening's being planned, and it's my birthday or my husband's birthday or our anniversary or their anniversary. And so, but I'm feeling angry at him right now or her right now. I've got to say it right now, and so because that's integrity, and I can't go around with this feeling all night long inside of me, so I've got to get it out. And so what I ask each couple to do is to create a conflict-free zone of 166 hours a week. So what do you do with that feeling? So I was mentioning that creating the conflict-free zone is one thing, but how do you sustain it? So I teach 6 different ways of sustaining the conflict-free zone. And the internal job is that you're saying to yourself, at this time, this 2 hours of what I call caring and sharing time, where you do the 6 mindsets, I am about 100% likely to feel heard and understood by my partner. If I bring this up now, I'm about 95% likely to get into an argument that will only make me feel worse about this experience, because my partner will feel defensive. She or he will respond negatively. It will only escalate, and maybe I'm going to try to do it now, but there's so you say to yourself, if there's 100% chance that I'll be heard on, say, Sunday when we have the caring and sharing time, and about a 95% chance that I won't be heard now, maybe I should put this off till Sunday. But most people either put things off forever, or they need to do it right away. So, but the important thing is what to do with it while you're having those feelings. So one of the first things to do with it is to go to like the computer or, ideally a computer, and just write out your perspective on why you are right and why your partner is wrong, which is what our first perspective always is. And don't just be totally fine with yourself about doing what is human. I'm 100% right. Here's why. She or he's 100% wrong. Here's why. And then you come back to, if you have more time, you come back to it, and sort of after you've done that, you got it all out, you then come back to it, and then you perfect a better argument as to why you're even more right than you thought before, and why they're even more wrong than you thought. And then you, having gotten those layers out, you then go back and take a look at it and say, well, what comes naturally, by the way, then is, I could have done this differently. And maybe I could have heard him here or there. Usually by the time Sunday comes around, it's an issue you realize you could have actually handled significantly differently, and the whole thing never would have become an issue in this way. But usually during the course of the week, one or two issues do not feel that way. They feel like something you really need to bring up and talk about. Those are the issues. That one of those issues, and only one of those issues, gets brought up on Sunday. Or whatever day you set aside for caring and sharing. And so that I found is a really helpful balance. So what I'm saying to every couple is, if you're criticized during that conflict-free zone and you get into an argument, it is your fault, because either one of you can get out of that argument at any second by just saying, Tanis, I realize I haven't been listening, or, neither one of us have been listening. I think we'll probably both be listening better if we do, the caring and sharing time together. Let's put this, it seems important to both of us, let's put this aside for a caring and sharing time. And both of you, so either one of you can walk out of that argument any second. And knowing that you have the security of a safe space to be heard allows almost every couple to do that, as long as they can do things like one of the 6 techniques I taught to deal with the issue between that point in time and the caring and sharing moment at the end of the week.
Okay. I really like that. I think that's...
echoing a little bit. Yeah, it's echoing on Warren's second.
Oh.
I'm going to have to mute Warren so Prim can speak. Sorry, go ahead, Prim.
I was just saying, I rather like that situation. It's kind of a more extended version of what I do now, because what I do now is I like I said, I've worked really hard on building up the confidence to express myself when I'm feeling upset with something. But what I do first is, whenever I feel upset, usually I go and take a few minutes to myself, just alone, and calm down. Just so that I don't, say something that I don't actually mean in the heat of the moment. And I mean, I'm not perfect. I have in the past, we've been together 8 years now. And I mean, obviously the occasional bad thing is going to slip out. And when that happens, I usually make a point to, in at least half an hour, and say, the thing that was, apologize. I say, that thing that I did, that was wrong of me, so I'm sorry for having done that. And then after that's kind of all out of the way, this is why I usually go and calm down now instead. It just makes things easier, streamlines the whole process. We go talk it out while we've, down. And that's usually how it works in the other direction too. So, we've kind of become quite adept at respecting each other's bitchy time whenever it's clear that the other person needs it. But yeah, I really like the idea of, taking that time quickly out of your day in order to actively work through and share these things with each other, and you can feel heard together.
We might have some trouble getting you unmuted there, Warren. Do you know how to unmute yourself on Google Hangouts? Because the control room has decided to get stuck. It should be the top. There you go. Yeah, you're good.
There we go.
This much about technology, I know. Are we back in?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay. Well, great. No, I'm glad that you're taking a step in that direction, Tanis. And the you were mentioning about you said something I shouldn't have said. One of the nice things about this whole caring and sharing time is that you will, in telling your story, you will say things that are not true, not accurate, even or exaggerated. Interestingly, when you know you're feeling heard, the need to exaggerate is very much minimized. But nevertheless, you'll give that, that when I was saying that your partner, when she's expressing or he's expressing their feelings, is going to feel like pollution in a stream. And that pollution in a stream is a version of their experience, but when they're feeling heard, that really does go away. And so that becomes a sort of core understanding that yes, when Tanis is upset, she's going to feel this way about me, about our relationship, about our time together, about our future. And when she feels heard, amazingly, those feelings are probably going to be much more like the pure, beautiful water and the experience and I'm not going to have to expect that pollution will still be there. On the other hand, if it comes up again and again, then I know the pollution is there the next week and has to be dealt with at a different level. So that also brings up a second thing that you were asking about, Allison, about what's done in the workshop. Almost about 85% of what people need is basically to feel heard in this type of way. But there are certain things that need to have changes in behavior. If your partner's having an affair, if you're at home and you want to, and your children are grown, but they want to move back in with you. If you're a little bit older and your parents want to move in with you, or you want your parents to move in with you because one is sick. If one of you feels that your lifestyle is too expensive and you need to move to a less expensive place, or that your lifestyle is putting you in a bad neighborhood for your kids in school, you want to move to a more expensive place, and what needs to be done with your job situation and to be able to handle a more expensive place. So those are just examples of things that you can hear each other out on. That's the good first step. But you might actually need to move, take a vacation in a different place, let your parents come in for a while, work out a compromise about it or whatever. And so they move to the next level, which is how to negotiate behavior change. And so that's a whole other thing. Any change in decisions that actually requires a concrete change in behavior, not just listening to each other. The decision to go to Morocco or stay at home for the next vacation, that type of thing.
Okay, thank you. So Prim, do you have anything else you wanted to talk about or bring up?
Well, I mean, there was just one thing kind of tangentially, just because I actually listened to your TED Talk last night, Warren, and I really appreciated that. I think that your commentary on the needs of boys and men and how couples communication training can assist with that. I think that's really wonderful, and I think a lot of people need to hear that more. I think the situation probably wouldn't be nearly so dire if there was more of an emphasis in our community on the concept of shared parenting and equal custody, because then at least children would be able to get some time with and influence from both parents. The way the system is structured now, it admittedly doesn't really seem to benefit much of anyone. We actually just talked about this subject last night and how the legal system seems more geared towards punishing men than working towards the best interests of the children. And I know there's really only so much that we can do to change the entire legal system. So perhaps the best thing that we can do for now is to set about repairing the relationships between men and women. And I really appreciate what you're doing. I think you're doing a great job of that.
Thank you very much. The degree to which you are right is so much greater than almost anybody knows. So when there's a divorce, children that don't have both parents involved in what I call checks and balances parenting, where where the mother is involved about half the time, where the father's involved about half the time, where both the mom and father and mom and dad live close enough to each other so that the children don't have to lose their they don't have to lose their friends or lose their activities or not go to a friend's birthday party in order to see the other parent. So that's a second crucial thing that needs to happen when there's a divorce. A third crucial thing that needs to happen when there's a divorce is neither parent, the child not being able to hear or detect either parent bad-mouthing the other parent. And the fourth is couples communication. The data shows that when there's consistent couples communication, even just once a month, that the parents are meeting with each other to try to work out the next month or the next set of activities or the feelings or situations that are different. When those four things are combined, then children do reasonably well, almost as well as if they lived in an intact family. But one of the crucial differences is that both boys and girls suffer enormously when there's a minimal amount of father involvement. So, for example, studies of ISIS recruits find that the one thing that ISIS recruits have in common, as much as being male, is when you look at the males and females together, is a lack of father involvement. That is the most common denominator of the male and female ISIS recruits. And when you look at life expectancy, so in pediatrics of 2017, there was a study of telomeres. Telomeres are the portion of your cell that, when they are longer, predict a greater life expectancy. When they're shorter, they predict a shorter life expectancy. Well, a child who is 9 years of age, girl or boy, who has a minimal amount of father involvement or no father involvement, has telomeres that are 14% shorter, predicting a life expectancy of approximately 14% less by the time they are 9 years of age. That said, the boy's life expectancy is 40. The boys' telomeres are 40% shorter than the girls' telomeres are.
Jeez.
Whenever there is family disruption, and that leaves the father out of the equation, or leaves the mother significantly or completely out of the equation, the children are enormously upset and disrupted. However, family disruption hurts boys very significantly more than girls, whether it's measured that way, or I'll give one more example to give you a sense of the power of this. The Department of Housing and Urban Development felt that one of the reasons that children didn't do well is because if they grew up in poor neighborhoods, they would have an inherent disadvantage. So they had two huge groups of children. One was allowed, and one was in the same neighborhood it had been brought up in. The other group was moved to what was considered a better neighborhood with a better school district. The girls improved socially, psychologically, and academically. The boys deteriorated. In a better environment, when girls and boys break up in relationships, boys go more into more mental problems, do more acting out, do more depression than girls do, because girls, as a rule, have better social skills, better emotional skills to be able to adjust to new environments than boys tend to have. So those are just a couple of examples of the differences, the degree to which both genders are significantly hurt when there's a lack of father involvement. Girls, for example, when there's a lack of father involvement, are much more likely to be either sexual too quickly before they're ready, but they're uncomfortable enough with men to not be able to fear that they're going to lose the man if they're not sexual, or so fearful of men they aren't able to get in touch with their own sexuality and their own sexual desires, and they're either repressed or over more quickly than is healthy expressed.
Wow, thank you for telling us about that, and you can really see the patterns of that kind of spreading out in society right now.
I actually had an observation, sorry to interrupt you too, about fatherlessness that is very topical. Have you heard about the alt-right, Warren Farrell?
Of course.
I'm actually specifically referring to the part of the alt-right that talks about a white race state. I call it a white race state because white is not an ethnicity, so it's not an ethno state. But what's really interesting is that the person or the man who coined the 14 words, which is something like preserve a place for our people and our children, and the history of the white race, whatever it is. The man's name was David Lane, and his father left. And when he was 4, left his home when he was 4. So it's sort of the same kind of general situation that you were seeing with the people who are recruited by ISIS.
Yes.
And his mother was actually a prostitute. And he says that his father forced his mother into prostitution to pay for his alcoholism. Although his father left the house at 4, so the only way he could know that is because his mother told him that. So it's just a really interesting that not only do you see the people or the men who are recruited into ISIS being from these fatherless homes, but you see all of this kind of the same thing in the West. Again, the repetition of the fatherlessness.
Absolutely.
And then the lack of a connection with an adult male figure in their life.
Yes.
So I just wanted to put that out and this is something I learned recently, so it's been on my mind. But yeah, that's some great information about fatherlessness and the effects of fatherlessness in extremism, in increasing the rate of death, untimely death, and all kinds of other negative effects. It's getting to be close to the end of the hour. And I was wondering if there was anything that you wanted, like some wrap-up stuff about your workshop and what you hope to accomplish with the things that you do that you might want to talk about.
Sure. Maybe I'll make the connection between this. The book I've been working on for the last 11 years is called The Boy Crisis, and it's coming out very soon. But the connection is, what's the connection between the boy crisis and the couple's communication? And the connection is that the boy crisis is happening in all 63 major developed countries in the developed world. The developed world has the permission for divorce. When there's a permission for divorce, there's a much higher percentage of lack of father involvement. When there's a higher percentage of the lack of father involvement, there is a boy crisis. And so the next question becomes then, do we want to societally prevent divorce? No, we don't want to be, forcing people to be married when they don't want to be. We want people to have a better marriage or a better, relationship, ideally marriage, because marriage, if there's not a marriage, I don't have a thing about marriage versus non-marriage if you don't have children. But what we do know is if you have children, the chances are much greater that the father will be equally involved and stably involved if the children, if they're married. And so how do we have a marriage that's good, that's healthy for both the woman and the man, or the couple, the male couple or the female couple? And the way you have a marriage that's good is by having this type of healthy communication. So that gives the children, I remember my daughter, when she had her first problems with her boyfriend, they came to me and I started explaining what they can do differently. And my daughter, who I didn't think was ever listening to what I said, went, "Oh my God, that's what you and mom do all the time." The kids. So the best thing we can do is have things like in the Boy Crisis book, I talk about how to structure a family dinner night so that everybody at the family dinner table feels heard, so that anything is allowed to be talked about, controversial or not controversial. So those are the systems that we need to build into our families, so that our children, without electronics at the table, are hearing each other, communicating in a way where everything is safe, and then seeing their parents do the same thing. That's the connection between the boy crisis and and couples communication and family communication.
All right, thank you for that. Did you have any final words, Prim? Any final thoughts, statements?
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you for what you do, and I only hope that I can help people the way that you have in the future.
I sense you will be able to, because you care and you're focused, and it sounds like you're doing everything to work out a good relationship in your life. Are you thinking about having children?
Yeah, thinking about it. We're hoping that the right time comes along whenever that will be. So we'll see how it goes.
Yes. Well, good. It's really a pleasure to meet you and have your input. And
Well,
I love your background chair.
yeah, it's headboard, but
Oh,
yeah,
good.
it was a great honor to be able to talk with you today as well.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us to talk about this. Is a very important topic to try to bring some sanity and understanding to the conversation between the genders, because there is not much of it.
Thank you for being so patient, for waiting so long till I finished the book and could really focus on dialoguing with you.
I know. Well, hopefully it'll be less time that you come back.
I know now it will be, and so I look very forward to reconnecting with you again. You're always such a thoughtful interviewer and such a good listener, and then have good insights, and so I always appreciate my time with you.
Well, thank you. And I'd certainly love to go over a previous topic that we've had, which is basically talking to people that in your life, just strangers or your friends and family about these issues and why they're important, and being able to bring it up in a way that they'll maybe listen.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, that lots of people ask for that particular topic. So I want to thank you again for joining us, Warren, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you for listening so well.
Thank you for being a great advocate for men and boys.
Thank you.
All right, now just addressing our audience. If you enjoy this kind of content and you enjoy what we have to say, if you want to be part of what I hope to be as a positive change in the world, getting people to hear each other, getting people to understand each other's positions, and move forward to a place where we all listen to each other and all really say what we're trying, really listen to what people are trying to say. Please consider supporting us, www.feedthebadger.com. Thank you, and see you tomorrow, or see you, well, not tomorrow, because tomorrow's Saturday is my official day off, but see you whenever the badger stirs again. Good night.